Okay, welcome back to Gary's Economics. Today we are going to talk about how you keep your house. Okay, so I wanted to do a video called How You Keep Your House because the whole argument of this channel is that we live in an economy of rapidly growing wealth inequality, and that leads to ordinary families losing their homes, governments losing their assets, and ordinary families and governments going further into debt because those assets are going to the rich and people are being forced to basically borrow money back from the rich in order to protect any asset ownership. And this is really bad specifically for the middle class, right? Because the middle class are the group of people in society who used to own assets and are losing their assets. But as the middle class lose their assets to the rich and the rich get richer and richer and richer, because rich people like to buy assets, as the rich get richer, they bid the prices of assets up. And you get this kind of split, which is rich people like assets, ordinary people like goods and services. So as inequality increases, asset prices go up and wage rates fall. And the middle class should hate this, right? Because they're the group of people that own the assets. And yet sometimes when I talk to my more middle class friends, they actually think it's good because what they see is their house prices rising, stock prices are rising, and maybe they've got like a small pension pot and that's going up. So for them, it's kind of like the numbers going up, we're good, I'm getting richer, my house price is going up, my pension pot is going up. So it creates this kind of like interesting, confusing thing which is happening, which is the same group of people in society who are getting squeezed out are kind of like cheering on their own demise. And they think they're winning because they say, well, I'm getting richer. And what I normally say to these people is, well, you know, the only way for you to benefit from your house price going up is to sell your house. And once you've sold your house, you know, in a world where housing is unbelievably expensive, then your kids will never get homes. So you're basically, you know, you're selling the family silverware, you're going to become poor. And the only way for you to benefit is to give up the most important thing that you have, basically. And what they then sometimes say to me is, well, it doesn't matter, I'm just not going to sell the house. I'm not going to sell the house. I'm going to dig in. I'm going to keep the house. And you have this kind of perception of, I'm just going to hold on to this thing. I'm going to cling on to this asset. And I'm going to get richer. I'm going to get richer. I'm going to get richer. And they're kind of seduced in a way by like this rising asset value. So I wanted to do this video today to talk about this idea of I can keep my house as long as I just never sell. And kind of explain why that is basically a bad strategy to take care of your family in the world that we live in. And the reason for that is, so if you accept that we live in this world where inequality is increasing, and in general the middle class is being thinned out, and the government is becoming poorer, and that wealth is instead being held by the rich, that causes a thing to happen, which is asset prices get more and more expensive, and the rich hold more and more assets. But because the middle class, which is your traditional consumer, is being weakened, the cost of like basic consumption doesn't really go up because that basic consumption market is selling to ordinary people. Ordinary people are being screwed over. It's the rich who are making money and what they want is assets. So then from the perspective of an individual rich person, what you have is, I'm crazy rich. I have a ton of assets. The price of those assets is going through the roof. And yet the cost of like regular consumption is really low. And I often talk about on this channel that rich people have like a low marginal propensity to consume, which is they don't tend to spend a lot of the money you give them. But as they get richer and richer, and the price of assets get more and more expensive relative to the price of consumption, these guys will start to consume more stuff. And that is when this kind of, I'm going to keep my house, I'm not going to sell my house person, basically starts to get screwed. And I think probably the easiest place in which you can see it at the moment is, for example, in elite education. So very rich people, they want to send their kids to elite universities, Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, Yale. And there's only so many places at these like top universities, which you kind of need to get into nowadays if you want to get one of the best paid jobs. And as the rich get richer and richer, it becomes quite easy for them to pay $30,000, $50,000. And you know, rich people do frequently pay those kinds of amounts of money per year to send their kids to elite universities. And And they can do that. They can easily do that because they're super, 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 super rich. And it is only because in some parts of the world, the government protects ordinary people, that ordinary people don't have to do that. But as the universities can increasingly sell a place to a rich person for 50,000 a year, 70,000 a year, inevitably that starts to squeeze up the price that you have to pay to send your kids to the elite university. And that is when you start to see the consequences of your strategy, which is I'm going to hold on to my house and I'm not going to care about the fact that the 1% is getting unbelievably rich. That's like politics of envy. Forget that. Well, your kids are competing with their kids to go to the elite universities. And if their wealth is just blowing up, then they're going to pay 50 grand a year, 70 grand a year, 90 grand a year. And eventually, the end result is your kids can't afford to go to good university, they can't compete with their kids for the best jobs, and then their kids are making £500,000 a year, and your kids are, working for 20, 30,000, 40,000 pounds a year. So it ends up in a situation where, okay, I'll hold on to my house, but the cost of that will be my kids can't go to good university, my kids can't get a good job. But it's not just the elite university market, right? So I went to a grammar school in East London. So people who don't know, a grammar school is like a free school, but it's like a slightly fancy school, and it tends to get people into better jobs, better universities. So I went to school with a lot of kind of middle class kids who got good degrees, and a lot of them went into medicine and dentistry. So they became doctors and dentists. And now the doctors and dentists who make the most money, what they do is cosmetic surgery for rich people, things like Botox or like teeth whitening, teeth straightening, cosmetic stuff that is obviously not like medically essential, or they work for private healthcare for rich people. And that's, who cares about that? That's politics of envy. Well, what happens when you need a dentist? What happens when your kids need a dentist? And we're in a situation now in this country where it's becoming increasingly impossible to get an NHS dentist, to get cheap or affordable dental care. And as a result, people are just not going to the dentist. And it's not that the dentists are not there. It is that just like your kids are in competition with the kids of the rich for elite university places, you and your kids are in competition with the rich for access to the dentists and access to the doctors. So you're there, you're thinking, I'm just going to keep my house, I'm going to keep my house, I'm going to keep my house. Who cares if they're getting rich? That's politics of envy, that's politics of envy. And then they've outcompeted you for university. Your kids can't go to university. They've outcompeted you for a dentist. Now your kids don't have a dentist. They've outcompeted you for the doctors, and now you can't get access to healthcare. What I'm trying to say is, it's a very unwise strategy to hold on to your house like it's your baby and just watch the price of the house going up, while you and your class are being rapidly outcompeted for all of the things that you need by this one other group of society. Because, of course, nobody can force you to sell your house, but they can take all of the other things that you need. And eventually you're going to be put in a situation where the only way to get just the basics of living is to sell your house. And the most obvious example of this is when you look at equity release schemes. So for people who don't know what equity release schemes are, you'll see these advertised. If you're ever watching daytime TV, you'll see them advertised on TV. And my grandparents all owned property, but they never died with property because they used these equity release schemes. And these equity release schemes are basically saying, look, we'll let you keep your house. You can live in your house till you die, but we'll give you money during your retirement, and then when you die, the house is ours. And what you're seeing here is, I think that the best example is during COVID. I've spoken about this a lot on the channel. We gave an enormous amount of money out, and that money ended up with richer people. And a lot of people were like, well, it doesn't matter if the rich get money, who cares, if the rich get money. I think there's a quote by, was it Peter Mandelson, who says, I'm intensely relaxed about the rich getting rich. If the rich get rich, they will start to consume more stuff, and some of that stuff will be stuff that you need. And some of the obvious repercussions of that were, rents in London went absolutely crazy. If you give a ton of money to rich people, of course rents in London will go crazy. They'll give that money to their kids will buy houses, their kids won't need to share, they won't need to take flatmates because they'll be really, really rich. There's less housing, and the rents will go up. The rents don't go up out of nowhere. Somebody's paying them. The rich people are paying them. So you see them, they squeeze you out of education, they squeeze you out of healthcare, they squeeze you out of housing. We were talking earlier today about the potato famine in Ireland, and there were also famines in India during British rule. And at the time that there were famines in India and millions of people were dying because of lack of access to food, there were enormous fields, farms in India, growing tea, which was shipped to England. So farms that could be growing food are growing tea, an inedible luxury crop to be sent to England, while local people are starving, dying, It doesn't matter if you keep your house, because eventually the rich are going to outcompete you for education, for healthcare, for housing, and at the end of the day, for food and energy. And when we talk about these old ladies who are using equity release schemes, in many cases, these are old ladies who are using those equity release schemes to heat their homes while they're 80 years old. And why is it that the energy price has doubled? Who's using the energy? Rich people. Rich people don't keep the heating off. If you allow these people to get richer and richer and richer, they will consume more, you will consume less. And eventually you'll be forced to sell your house. It doesn't work. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is it's very short-sighted to think that you are winning when house prices go up just because you are keeping your house, when everyone around you, your class, people like you, people in the same financial situation as you, are losing their houses, and a small section of society that you are not in is taking everything. The wealth of the rich will grow and grow and grow. If you don't stop that, eventually you lose everything. It's a little bit like, if you play chess, you only lose a game of chess if you lose your king. So if we're playing chess and you're taking one of my pieces every single day, and I'm just like, well, that's not my king, that's not my king, that's not my king, you need to protect your competitive position. There's this French film, La Haine, talks about a man who jumps off a skyscraper, and as he was falling, keeps saying to himself, so far so good, so far so good, so far so good. Yes, I know house prices are going up. And house prices are going up because the rich are getting richer and richer and richer. That is not, an increase in wealth inequality is not an abstract thing. It is a transfer of wealth away from the middle class, which most of the viewers will be in, towards the super rich. It looks good because your house is going up. The end result is, the only way you can keep that house is by slowly giving up every single one of the things that you need. And that guarantees poverty, basically. So, the end of the video, how to keep your house. The way to keep your house, if you are a middle class person, is to protect the middle class from the rapidly growing wealth of the rich. You have to stop that flow. You have to stop that flow. Like, you can't sit there. It's like you're like one part of the bathwater, watching the bathwater go down the drain, and you're like, well, my part's not down the drain yet. You can't. If you exist in a society where there is an aggressive flow of wealth away from the middle class towards the rich, and you are in the middle class, you have to stop the flow. You have to stop the flow. And I think there's a really kind of beautiful parallel in this, where we have a new government in this country, a Labour government, that is watching wealth flood out of the government towards the rich. And they're just like, well, if we're a little bit more sensible, if you manage this a little bit better, then we can fix things. And then it turns out they actually don't have any money to do anything. What the government are doing is exactly the same as a middle class person. It's like, you're existing in a situation, you are obviously losing, you're obviously dying, your wealth is flooding away, and you are stupidly, stubbornly resistant to doing anything to stop that flow. And then you're surprised when it leads you to poverty. The way to keep your house is to protect your class as a group. If your class dies, if your group dies, you die as well. You need to fight back against that. You need to protect the middle class and the rich. If you don't do that, the rich eat the middle class, then there's no middle class. And if you want to know what a country looks like with no middle class, go to Mexico, go to Colombia, go to Nigeria, go to India, go to South Africa. It's poverty for the many. The only way to stop that, tax the super rich. Lower tax on ordinary people. You have to fight back. You have to protect yourself. Otherwise, you lose everything. You keep your house by working together and protecting your people.